The Forgotten Link. Introduction. You are not your thoughts. You are not your wounds. You are not the identity the world carved into you. You are awareness, pure, timeless, and indestructible. A current of divine intelligence moves through you now, older than time, wiser than words, deeper than anything your conscious mind can grasp. Long before you had a name, before you were shaped by memory, expectation, or fear, you were light, you were vast, you were one with the source, and you still are. Beneath every layer of thought, behind every mask of ego, there is a silence within you that never forgets. A living presence that has watched your entire journey, unmoving, unchanging, untouched. It speaks without sound. It guides without force. It is not far away. It is who you truly are. This is your superconsciousness. Not a theory, not a dream, not some elite power buried in sacred texts or ancient temples. It is the highest part of you, the real part of you, the self that lives in total union with the divine, and now you are ready to meet it. You didn't find this message by accident. Something in you, beneath language, beneath time, called for it, and now that call is being answered. Welcome to the Middle Book, a sacred space for those who sense there is more than the surface, for those who feel the pull of something higher, for those who know the soul didn't come here to survive, but to awaken. Here you will not be told who to become. You will be reminded of what you already are. This is not information. This is initiation, because you are not here to chase truth. You are here to remember it. You are not here to earn the divine. You are here to reveal it, and your superconsciousness is the gateway. So, close the door to the outside world, step into the quiet, and listen, not with your ears, but with your being. The one who knows is ready to speak, and the part of you that always knew is finally ready to answer. Chapter 1. What is superconsciousness? What is this presence that watches you from within? The voice that is not quite a voice, the knowing that doesn't speak in language, but in light. The guidance that rises not from logic, but from something deeper, something that feels like truth before it becomes thought. This is your superconsciousness. It is not some forgotten secret buried in ancient scrolls, nor a rare power granted only to saints and sages. It is not locked behind monastery walls or waiting in mountaintop silence. It is already within you, and it has always been. But to understand what the superconscious is, you must first understand what it is not. It is not the mind you use to calculate, solve, and organize your days. The conscious mind is efficient. It makes decisions, it reads maps, it answers emails, but it does not create reality. It reacts to it. Beneath that surface is another mind, more mysterious and powerful, the subconscious. This is where your habits live, where your beliefs and unhealed wounds lie curled like sleeping seeds. The subconscious doesn't question. It accepts whatever it is fed and brings it to life. It is the dreamer behind the curtain, the emotional engine running silently beneath your thoughts. But the superconscious is higher than both. It is the clear sky above the storm, untouched by fear, free from programming, and immune to the patterns of your past. It is the purest part of you, the aspect that was never damaged, never doubted, never deceived. It is the mind of the infinite, operating quietly within the finite. In the great traditions, this higher mind has many names. The Vedantic mystics called it Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness, beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Pure awareness, the one who watches even as you sleep. In Christian mysticism, it is the Christ mind, not the personal mind of Jesus, but the divine intelligence that awakens in anyone who lives from love. St. Paul called it the mind of Christ, a consciousness inseparable from God. The Kabbalists called it Keter, the crown, light before thought, silence before form. The Hermetic philosophers knew it as the Logos, the divine mind, the cosmic order that speaks reality into being. Jung saw it in the archetypal self, the original blueprint buried beneath the noise of the psyche, the magnetic center around which life organizes itself. And in modern metaphysics, From Neville Goddard to Florence Scovel Shinn to Ernest Holmes, it appears under many names: the higher self, the I Am, infinite intelligence, the secret place of the Most High. But despite the names, the message is always the same. There is a part of you that already knows. It already sees. It already remembers the path your soul came to walk, and when you quiet the noise, you can hear it. The superconscious is not a mind that needs repair. It is not a system to be reprogrammed. It was never corrupted. It is already whole, already aligned with divine law. It sees your life not as a series of disconnected events, but as an elegant unfolding. It holds the vision of who you truly are, not the version built by fear, not the one carved from trauma, but the one designed with purpose before time began. Where the conscious mind sees obstacles, the superconscious sees opportunities for alignment. Where the subconscious clings to patterns, the superconscious radiates new possibilities. Where the ego whispers, "You are not enough," the superconscious gently declares, "You are already what you seek." You do not need to become divine, you already are. But that truth will not appear in your outer life until your awareness rises to meet it, until you remember. This is why prayer, meditation, silence, and sacred imagination are not just practices. They are keys. They lift your perception. They quiet the lower mind. They tune your frequency to the higher field, where miracles are not exceptions, but natural outcomes of divine law. Neville Goddard called this field the realm of fulfilled desire, not because it obeys your will, but because it aligns you with the life your soul already chose. You don't earn access to the superconscious. You don't qualify for it with effort or discipline. You simply remember it. You give it permission. Like sunlight behind a curtain, it waits until you pull back the illusion that you are broken, that you are separate, that you must become something other than what you are. You are not here to chase the divine. You are here to open to it. You are the channel, the vessel, the bridge. And the more you identify with the part of you that knows, that trusts, that remembers, the more your life begins to reflect the harmony and peace that only truth can create. This is not mysticism for mysticism's sake. This is metaphysics, the living science of consciousness in motion. And it begins with a single, quiet revolution. Stop identifying with the mind that fears and start remembering the mind that knows. So ask yourself now, gently, honestly, what if I stopped chasing guidance and began listening to the part of me that has always been guided? What if I stopped trying to fix the egos and began aligning with the divine? What if everything I've ever needed has already been waiting? In the silence behind my thoughts, in the light behind my eyes, in the center of my soul, because it has, and now you are beginning to remember, beginning to... Chapter 2. The Illusion of Separation. You were never cut off, but it felt that way, because from the moment you took your first breath, you entered a world that taught you to forget. Forget your source. Forget your wholeness. Forget that the divine was never outside of you. The greatest illusion isn't that you are powerless. It's that you are separate. Separate from God. Separate from love. Separate from each other. Separate from the truth itself. This illusion didn't begin with you. It is an inheritance passed down quietly, invisibly through generations. A virus of perception planted deep into the subconscious by culture, by trauma, by fear. From the earliest days you were told who to be, what to think, and how to act. You were rewarded for following the rules. You were corrected for listening to your own voice. And slowly, so slowly you didn't even notice, the noise of the world grew louder than the whisper within, the whisper of your superconscious. You began to believe you were just this body, just this personality, just this fragile story trying to survive. And that, right there, was the fall, not from heaven, but from awareness, not from grace, but from presence. The ego, born from this forgetting, feeds on separation. It thrives on the idea that you are alone, that life is happening to you rather than through you, that there's something you must prove, someone you must become, a place you must reach. And so you strive, you hustle, you try to fix, improve, change, and perfect. You chase the version of yourself that might finally be enough. All the while, the superconscious waits, not judging, not demanding, just waiting. It cannot intrude. It is too gentle for that. It knocks softly through your intuition, your dreams, the quiet synchronicities you call coincidences. But when your mind is racing, you miss it. When you're locked in survival, you override it. When you identify with fear, you forget it even exists. That is the true illusion, not that the divine abandoned you, but that you stopped listening. You've been taught that the way forward is to work endlessly on yourself, to always be striving, always becoming, but the superconscious doesn't ask for improvement, it asks for revelation. You cannot heal your way into divinity. You can only remember that it never left you. You do not ascend by effort, you ascend by remembering. The subconscious is a loyal servant. It takes orders from whatever voice is loudest, and for most people, that voice is fear. So it obeys. It repeats stories of lack and limitation, echoes of pain mistaken for truth. It plays the same emotional melodies on loop because repetition feels safe, even if it hurts. But the moment you begin to rise in awareness, when you start to question the thoughts you once took as gospel, you begin to see clearly. You are not your programming. You are not your past. You are not your patterns or pain. You are the presence that observes it all. And that presence is not a product of thought. It is the superconscious, the watcher behind the mind, the silent truth behind the noise. There is a veil between your mind and your higher self, but it is not made of stone, it is made of belief. Belief in separation, in fear, in the idea that God lives somewhere far away instead of in your breath, your awareness, the space behind your eyes, and between these words. You don't need to tear that veil down. You only need to see it for what it is, nothing more than mist. And like mist in the morning sun, it vanishes the moment light shines through. That light is present. That light is attention. That light is your awareness, free from judgment. The more you learn to observe your inner world with openness, the more space you create. And in that space, the voice of the superconscious can finally speak. Your outer world mirrors your inner state, not your divine essence but your dominant consciousness. When you believe you are separate, life reflects back that illusion through people, events, and outcomes that echo your disconnection. But the moment you begin to remember, when you lift your gaze and say, I am not this fear, I am something more, life responds. Not because you forced it, but because you changed your frequency. You tuned to a higher signal. You began to vibrate with truth. And the truth you forgot is this: you are not trying to reach the divine. You are made of it. You are not trying to earn love. You are love, made manifest. You are not lost. You are simply learning to see again. Your heart is not broken, it is opening. Your pain is not failure. It is the friction between the self you were taught to be and the self you already are. Even your longing, that quiet ache you felt for as long as you can remember, that's not emptiness. That is your soul hearing the call of home. That is your superconscious reminding you where you came from. And home is here, not some future destination, not some perfected version of yourself waiting to arrive. Home is this breath, this stillness, this now. The illusion of separation crumbles the moment you turn inward with sincerity, with humility, with the smallest willingness to remember. You don't need to know how. You don't need to be perfect. You don't even need to be ready. You only need to say yes. Yes to truth. Yes to stillness. Yes to remembering what your soul never forgot. You are not separate. You are not less. You are not incomplete. You are a divine being with a forgotten memory and a rising flame. And now, you are waking up. Chapter 3. Listening to the voice of the divine within. There is a voice inside you that does not speak in words. It speaks in knowing, in stillness, in the quiet pull toward what is true, even when logic disagrees. It does not shout. It does not rush. It waits. And when you are still enough, soft enough, humble enough, you begin to hear it. This is the voice of your superconscious, the divine intelligence within you, not separate from the mind of God, but a current of it flows through you as you've heard it before. In the moments when you knew something was right, even before it made sense. In the decision you couldn't explain but had to follow. In the presence that wrapped around you during grief, reminding you that nothing real can be lost. It has always been there. But in a world addicted to noise, it's easy to mistake that stillness for emptiness, to doubt the guidance because it whispers while fear screams. And yet, it remains. It is the voice that guided mystics through deserts, sages through silence, prophets through exile. It is the same intelligence that moves the tides, shapes the stars, and causes your heart to beat while you sleep. You don't need to understand it to trust it. You only need to recognize it. It's the clarity that comes when you stop trying to figure it out, the lightness that follows a surrendered choice, the path that opens the moment you stop forcing and begin flowing. Many call it intuition, but it's more than instinct, it's more than a hunch. It's the language of the divine, tailored for you, speaking through the unique vocabulary of your soul. Some feel it in their gut, others hear it in dreams, some experience it through creativity, sudden inspiration that feels like it came from nowhere, and perhaps it did, from nowhere, which is everywhere. When you listen to this voice, life begins to align in ways the ego cannot comprehend. You stop chasing, you stop controlling. You begin to dance with something higher, a rhythm that is not dictated by the world, but by the divine pulse that beats behind the veil of form. This voice is not your imagination, in the way you were taught to dismiss it. In fact, your imagination is the doorway to it. Neville Goddard called imagination the language of God. Because when you imagine from love, from truth, from peace, you are not making something up. You are remembering something eternal. The superconscious does not need external proof. It offers internal conviction, a quiet certainty, a deep yes. But to hear it, you must become quiet enough to distinguish it from the chatter of fear. Fear demands urgency. Divine guidance waits for openness. Fear rushes. Truth breathes. To live from the superconscious is not to abandon reason, but to place it in service to a higher knowing. You use your conscious mind not as a master, but as a translator, a servant to the deeper wisdom that flows from within. You begin to ask different questions. Not what do I want, but what is trying to emerge through me. Not what will make me feel safe, but what is the next step in trust. Not how do I control this, but how do I surrender more fully to what is already being guided. And then life answers, not always with immediate outcomes, but with signs, alignments, resonance, the right words at the right time, a stranger echoing your inner thoughts, a door closing, only to reveal a better one behind it. When you live from the superconscious, the world becomes more alive, not because it has changed, but because you are finally seeing through eyes that were made to perceive the deeper pattern. You begin to walk not with certainty of outcome, but with certainty of alignment. And that becomes enough. There is no formula for hearing the voice of your divine self. There is only one relationship. You build it as you would with someone you love, by listening, by honoring, by showing up. Every time you choose stillness over reaction, you strengthen the signal. Every time you pause before speaking and ask, what would truth say here? You train the nervous system to recognize the frequency of your higher self, and when you do this often enough, a shift begins. You stop looking for signs. You become the sign. You stop waiting for guidance. You live in a state of guidance. You stop asking to be saved. You realize you were never lost, because the voice was never outside of you. It was the one you silenced when you chose to please others. It was the one you ignored when fear masqueraded as reason. It was the one you doubted because it felt too loving to be real. But it was real, and it still is. And now, as you listen again, you are returning, not to an old identity, not to a fantasy, but to the one who has always known, the one who does not speak to impress but to illuminate, the one who does not chase the world but aligns with its source, the one who is not waiting for heaven but carries it within. This voice will not argue, it will not demand, it will not flood your mind with fear-based stories. It simply speaks once clearly and lets your soul decide. You will know it by how it feels. Calm, expansive, true. It is not louder than the world, but it is deeper than that. And once you hear it, once you recognize the texture of divine intelligence moving through you, you will never again trust noise over stillness. The superconscious is not a guest in your mind. It is the architect. And now, you are finally learning to hear the one who has always been speaking. Chapter 4. States of Consciousness and Access Points. To walk through the world without awareness of your higher mind is to live in a house without light. The structure is there, the foundation holds, but everything feels limited, dim, uncertain, filled with shadows. And yet, the moment a window opens, even just a little, the entire atmosphere shifts. You don't need to understand the mechanics of light to feel its warmth. You only need to open. This is what happens when you begin to access the superconscious. You're not changing who you are. You're simply removing what was in the way. Consciousness is not a fixed state. It is a spectrum, alive, fluid, shifting moment to moment. You move through different layers of it every day, though you may not notice. The waking mind, sharp, thinking, linear, serves its purpose. It helps you navigate the world. But it sees only the surface. It cannot feel the soul. Beneath that is the subconscious, vast, emotional, filled with memory and momentum. It is powerful, yes, but also reactive. It does not choose. It repeats. And then, there is something else. The witness, the still one, the seer behind the seeing. The superconscious is not another layer to analyze. It is the field in which all other layers arise. It is not a part of your mind. It is the source of it. And yet, you can access it, not by effort, but by attunement. It does not respond to force. It responds to resonance. You don't climb into the superconscious with willpower. You relax into it with presence. There are moments in life when you've already touched it. Maybe you didn't recognize it by name, but your soul remembers. The moment you stood still before a sunset and forgot your identity. The second before sleep, when a strange clarity arrived. The deep silence in meditation when time vanished. The sacred awe you felt as a child looking up at the stars. Those were not coincidences. Those were thresholds. You were brushing against the veil. To access the superconscious is to step through it. And you can. Anytime. There is no single method, but there are sacred entryways, not formulas but frequencies, that open the door. One of the most direct paths is silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of resistance. The quieting of thought's need to control. The softening of the mind's grip on meaning. In silence, something ancient within you begins to stir, something spacious, something eternal. Meditation is not about escaping life. It is about remembering that you were never trapped in it. It is the art of listening, of being, of opening the channel, not to receive something new, but to realign with something original. Even your breath knows the way. When you breathe consciously, slow, deep, present, you shift from reaction to receptivity. The breath is the bridge between body and spirit, matter and light. With every conscious inhale, you invite presence. With every exhale, you release the lie of separation. Another gateway is imagination, but not the kind you were taught to dismiss as childish fantasy. Imagination, in its sacred form, is the canvas of creation. It is the interface between the human and the divine. Neville Goddard called it the God in action. When you imagine from love, from faith, from knowing, not hoping, you activate the superconscious blueprint. Try this. Close your eyes. Imagine a temple, not one you've seen, but one that comes to you. Let it rise in your mind without effort. Walk through it. Feel the ground beneath you. Hear the silence. In the center, see a light, radiant, still, knowing. This is the symbol of your superconscious. It may take form, or it may remain formless. But it's there. It always has been. This practice is not visualization. It is remembrance. And then there are dreams. The subconscious speaks in symbols. But sometimes when the noise is quiet and the veil is thin, the superconscious speaks through them too. Not all dreams are messages, but some are visitations. You know them by how they stay with you. How do they change you? How they feel more real than waking life? Keep a journal, not just to analyze, but to receive. Write down what moves you, what repeats, what lingers. Over time, patterns emerge, and through those patterns, a deeper self reveals itself. But most of all, listen, not with your ears, but with your being. Listen in the moments between moments, the stillness before the answer, the breath before the prayer, the space between the thoughts. In those spaces, the superconscious speaks. It doesn't come with lightning or drama, it comes with peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on outcomes, but the kind that remains even in the unknown. When you are aligned with this state, decisions become effortless. Action arises naturally. You are no longer driven by fear, but pulled by purpose. This is not philosophy. This is the essence of mystical experience. It is what saints and sages have always described, not a belief, a knowing, a state of direct communion with the source. And you don't need to be holy to reach it. You only need to be honest. Honest enough to admit that you don't know, soft enough to stop controlling, brave enough to let go of who you think you are. The path is not linear. There is no final arrival. The superconscious is not a place you reach, but a state you allow. Like sunlight through an open window, it is always available. The only question is, are you willing to open the curtain? Because once you do, once you glimpse what's beyond the mind, you'll never truly close it again. There will be moments when you forget. That's human. But now you know where to return. To silence, to stillness, to breathe, to vision, to the sacred space within you that has never been confused, never been lost, never been afraid. The part of you that watches all things with compassion. The one who remembers your purpose. The one who walks with the divine because it is divine. You are that. And now you are listening. Chapter 5. Divine Guidance, Not Wish Fulfillment. You were never meant to control life. You were meant to listen to it, to move in harmony with it, to follow its deeper rhythm. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that your power came from pushing, from striving, from setting a goal and bending the universe to meet it. You were told that manifestation was about asking and receiving, about speaking your desires into existence and waiting for the reward. But that is not superconscious living. That is still the ego trying to wear a crown. The superconscious does not exist to give you what you want. It exists to reveal what your soul has already chosen. It is not a vending machine for desires. It is a compass for divine unfolding. It is not here to reinforce your preferences. It is here to guide you into alignment with the reason you are alive. And this is where many turn away, because to live from the superconscious is to let go of the illusion that you know best. It is to surrender the script you've been clinging to, the timeline your ego swore would make you happy, and to open to something greater, something wiser, something true. Sometimes the path your soul has chosen will not match the desires of your surface mind, and that is not a punishment. It is protection. You may ask for comfort, but your soul knows you came here to grow. You may ask for approval, but your soul remembers you came here to embody truth. You may ask for shortcuts, but your soul came for transformation. The superconscious sees far beyond what the conscious mind can grasp. It holds the full map, while the ego clutches a single broken compass. And so when you pray from the ego, you often pray for limitation disguised as success. When you visualize from fear, you often manifest more of what you're trying to escape. But when you tune into the superconscious and ask, not what do I want, but what is trying to move through me, the answers change. The timeline shifts. Because you're no longer demanding that life obey you. You're allowing yourself to obey the truth that life already knows. This does not mean you abandon desire. Desire is holy when it rises from the higher self. It is a sacred longing. It is the soul remembering what it came here to express. But there is a difference between craving and calling. One is rooted in lack, the other in destiny. One tightens the body, the other opens the heart. So listen carefully to what your desire feels like. Does it contract you or expand you? Does it make you anxious or does it calm you with clarity? The superconscious does not speak in panic. It speaks in peace. Its guidance may challenge you, stretch you, even shake you, but it never confuses you. When you follow this inner knowing, you enter a flow, a rhythm, a deeper trust. You begin to see that rejection was redirection. Those closed doors were not failures, but invitations to turn. You stop measuring life by what you get and start measuring it by how aligned you feel. You move from reaction to revelation. And in this state, manifestation becomes effortless, not because you're forcing outcomes, but because you're becoming the vibration that attracts what already belongs to you. You stop trying to convince life. You become a match to the truth. You begin to realize that it was never about getting more. It was about receiving what was always yours but could only be seen from the higher plane. Sometimes, divine guidance will tell you to wait. Sometimes, it will ask you to release what you thought you needed. Sometimes, it will ask you to walk through fear, to stay when it's hard, to love when it hurts. But it always leads you home. Not to comfort, but to clarify. Not to fantasy, but to freedom. So if you ask the superconscious for something and it does not come, ask again. Not with pleading, but with presence. What is this trying to teach me? What is the deeper path? What am I being prepared for? You may not hear the answer in words, but you will feel it, in your body, in your energy, in the subtle rearrangement of your thoughts. You are not being punished when things don't go your way. You are being invited to trust a greater way, one that you can't always see, but one that is unfolding in perfect time. And the more you listen to that guidance, the more you trust its voice, the more it begins to shape your life, not from effort, but from alignment. You'll notice things begin to move before you ask. People show up who mirror your new frequency. Opportunities appear that match your soul's essence, not your ego's fantasy. This is the quiet miracle of superconscious living. You are not chasing a dream. You are living in a dream that is dreaming you back into wholeness. And it all begins when you let go of asking, how do I get what I want? And begin asking, how do I remember who I am? Because of that remembrance, everything else becomes clear. And from that clarity, the path unfolds, not ahead of you, but within you. And there the divine is waiting. Chapter 6. Rewriting the script of your life. You were born into a story you didn't write. A name, a history, a lineage, a language, a set of beliefs handed to you before you could speak. This is who you are, they said. This is where you belong. This is what is possible for someone like you. And so you lived the story, you followed the lines, you memorized the role. But somewhere inside, there was always a quiet unrest, a question that wouldn't die. What if this isn't all there is? What if this story isn't mine? That question is not a doubt. It is awakening. It is the superconscious stirring beneath the mask, reminding you that you are not the character, you are the author. The moment you realize this, the game changes, because you stop trying to fix your story and you start to rewrite it, not from willpower, but from a higher frequency of identity, because your story doesn't change when your circumstances do, it changes when you do. The superconscious is the divine screenwriter. It holds the original script, the one you co-wrote with Source before you arrived in this world of forgetting, the one that includes your challenges, yes, but also your liberation, the one that hides your purpose behind your pain, and your gifts are inside your wounds, and it waits patiently for you to step out of the scene long enough to read what's really been written. You cannot change your life from the same level of consciousness that created it. If you keep acting from the ego, you keep recycling the same roles. The victim, the hero, the chaser, the doubter. But when you rise into the superconscious, you rise above the script. You begin to see from the bird's eye view. You begin to edit, not with effort, but with awareness. You look at the stories you've been telling. I'm not enough. Nothing ever works out for me. I always mess it up. And you realize these are not truths. These are programs, loops, and they are editable. The superconscious doesn't fix broken stories. It replaces them with true ones. You are not here to repair your identity. You are here to remember your essence, and from that essence, create again. Neville Goddard taught that the key to transformation is assumption. That if you assume the state of the person you desire to be, truly, vividly, with feeling, your outer world must conform, not because of magic, because of the law. The law is consciousness. The law is identity. Whatever you deeply identify with, you become. So the question becomes, what version of yourself are you loyal to? The one your past built, or the one your soul knows? To rewrite the script, you must first shift the lead character. You must stop playing the role of the one who lacks, who waits, who begs, and start stepping into the one who remembers. That new self is not out there. It is already within you, encoded in your superconscious. And every time you choose trust instead of fear, from clarity instead of confusion, from love instead of reaction, you bring that version closer to the surface. Reality begins to reshape, because reality is not solid. It is responsive. It is fluid, like a mirror made of light, bending to reflect the image you hold of yourself. So look closely. Who are you being when no one's watching? What assumptions do you return to when you're tired? What roles do you replay out of habit, not choice? When you catch those moments, when you catch yourself in an old role, pause. Don't judge. Just choose again. Choose from the superconscious, not the subconscious. Choose from the part of you that knows your power, that knows you are a creator, not a character. Start with one scene, one choice, one new line in the story. Wake up and speak to yourself, not as the old self, but as the one who has already shifted. I walk with the divine today. I am led by clarity, not confusion. My story is sacred, and I am writing it consciously. I am not becoming, I am revealing. These are not affirmations. These are commands spoken from the higher mind. And when spoken consistently, they rewire your destiny. The past will try to pull you back. Old roles will feel familiar. People may resist the new script because they're still reading the old one. That's okay. You don't need them to believe it. You need to believe it because your world is not built by others. It is built by your dominant state of consciousness. And your superconscious always creates in alignment with your assumed identity. So assume wisely, not through effort but through faith, not by faking but by choosing. Again and again. You are not at the mercy of the old story. You are the author now, and the pen is in your hands. Write with courage, write with clarity, write with love. Because the divine is not waiting to rescue you. It is waiting to be created through you, and now you are ready. Chapter 7. The Field of Oneness. There is a place within you where the lines disappear, where there is no longer a me or a you, a this or a that. No separation between the breath you take and the sky that holds it. No distance between the thought and the thing, the seeker and the found. This is the field of oneness, not a theory, not a metaphor, but a living, breathing reality. The natural landscape of your superconscious mind. The world you see through the lens of your waking mind is divided. Objects, people, events, time, space. And that's useful for navigation, but it's not the whole story. It's a convenient illusion, a fragmented lens, a necessary dream you were meant to eventually wake from. Because behind the appearance of form is a field of pure potential, a field of light, awareness, frequency. And in that field, everything is connected. Every thought touches every cell. Every feeling ripples through the unseen web. Every being is not apart from you, but a part of you. The mystics have always spoken of this. The Sufis sang of it. The Vedantic sages called it Brahman. Jesus spoke of oneness with the Father. Lao Tzu called it the Tao. And now modern physics catches glimpses in quantum entanglement, in the observer effect, in the unified field. What they describe in their own languages is this: you are not in the universe, you are the universe, experiencing itself in a particular form. The superconscious mind does not see through the eyes of separation, it sees through the lens of the union. It doesn't ask, what can I get? It asks, What wants to move through me to serve the whole? Because when you rise into that higher plane, you feel it. The suffering of another becomes your own. The joy of another expands you. The pain of the world touches your chest like a personal grief. And the beauty of life humbles you like a long-lost memory. This is not weakness, this is awakening. When you feel this unity, you are no longer obsessed with proving, possessing, or outperforming. The need to win dies, because there is no one to defeat. The need to be right dissolves because you're no longer arguing with reflections. You realize, what I do to another, I do to myself. What I judge in another, I reject in myself. What I bless in another, I expand in me. And so you begin to move differently. You speak with more care, you listen with more presence. You create not for validation, but from overflow. You serve, not for recognition, but because it is the natural outpouring of divine unity. This is where love ceases to be a feeling and becomes a frequency. You don't love someone because of what they do. You love them because they are a part of you, because their soul is made of the same light. Even if they don't see it, even if they never will. This does not mean becoming passive. Oneness is not the denial of boundaries. It's the realization that all true boundaries are sacred, that saying no can be as holy as saying yes, that protecting your peace is not separation, but clarity. And in this state, your relationships change. You no longer look for someone to complete you. You remember you are already whole. You no longer seek to be needed. You seek to be present. You no longer fear being alone because you feel everything inside you all the time. Your sense of time shifts too. The past feels like another lifetime. The future is like a song already written. You begin to live in the eternal now, not as a practice, but as your default state. And in this now, you realize something simple and revolutionary. You don't need to chase alignment. You are alignment when you rest in truth. The superconscious doesn't try to manifest. It simply radiates. It doesn't ask for abundance. It is abundance. It doesn't perform spirituality. It embodies the spirit. From this field of oneness, the world becomes a mirror, not of your wounds, but of your awareness. You see every moment as a reflection of your frequency, and you take responsibility, not with guilt, but with empowerment. You stop blaming and you start blessing. You stop reacting and you start responding. You stop resisting life and you start co-creating with it. There is nothing left to chase, only more to remember, more to awaken, more to love, because you were never separate. That was the illusion. You were never broken. That was the story. You were never alone. That was the dream. And now the dream is dissolving. You are standing in the field is standing in you, and everything is beginning to return to light. Chapter 8. Living from the Higher Mind. There comes a moment on the path when remembering is no longer enough. You must live it, not occasionally, not only when it's easy, but as your default state, moment by moment, breath by breath. This is what it means to live from the superconscious. Not to retreat into bliss or escape the world, but to become fully present in it, with your awareness rooted above it. You no longer navigate life from your wounds, your programming, your triggers. You move from clarity, from intuition, from the deeper intelligence that already knows the next step before you ask. And yes, it takes practice, because the world will still try to pull you back, into noise, into reactivity, into proving and performing. But each time you pause, each time you center, each time you ask your higher mind, what would truth choose right now? You strengthen the signal. You rewire the path. You step into alignment. This is not discipline in the way you were taught, gritting your teeth, forcing yourself forward. This is devotion, a loving return again and again to the place within you that never forgets. So how do you live from that place? You start small, with your mornings. Before the world speaks, you speak, to yourself, to the divine within. You set the tone not by checking your phone, but by checking in with your soul. I walk today in truth. I am guided from within. I remember who I am, even when the world forgets. These aren't affirmations, they're activations. They don't beg for power, they awaken it. And then, before every decision, every conversation, every response. You pause, just long enough to remember, I don't have to react. I can respond from my higher self. I can choose from love, not fear. I can speak from peace, not control. That space between trigger and action, that is the gateway to the superconscious. And you keep going. You listen more than you speak. You let silence guide you. You begin to treat your inner world as sacred ground, not a battleground to conquer, but a temple to tend. You ask your higher self, what is mine to do today? Who is mine to serve? Where am I being guided? And you learn to follow the subtle current, not the loud demands of ego, but the quiet nudges that lead you to the right timing, right action, right resonance. And when the world pulls you off center, as it will, you don't spiral. You simply return. Because now you know the way home. Living from the higher mind doesn't mean perfection. It means presence. It means choosing again and again and again, until the choosing becomes your nature. You begin to create not from reaction, but from alignment. And in this state, your work changes. You stop hustling to be seen. You create from overflow. You write, speak, build, serve. Not to fill a void, but because you are full. You become a channel for something greater. You realize, I am not the source. I am the instrument. And that shift changes everything. There is no longer a fear of failure because your worth isn't tied to the outcome. There is no longer fear of judgment because you are no longer acting from a false self. You begin to lead, not with force, but with frequency. People feel your alignment before they hear your words. You walk into a room and shift the energy not because of charisma, but because of coherence. And your relationships? They evolve. You attract what mirrors your state. You stop calling in chaos because you're no longer resonating with it. You stop settling for half love because your higher self knows its worth. And when challenges come, as they always will, you don't collapse. You respond from the witness, not the wound. You ask, what is this here to reveal in me? And you listen. And you grow. Even your pain becomes a portal. Your old patterns begin to dissolve, not through resistance, but through disinterest. You don't need to fight them anymore. They simply fall away when you no longer feed them. This is the quiet revolution. The superconscious doesn't change your life with lightning. It changes it with light, gradual, persistent, illuminating everything in its path. And when you live in that light, you stop chasing purpose. You realize, I don't find my purpose. I express it. I don't discover my calling. I answer it, every day, in how I live, how I love, how I listen. You become a living transmission, not just for those who hear your words, but for everyone who feels your presence. You are no longer trying to make things happen. You are allowing them to unfold, guided by a deeper order, a divine rhythm that flows through your being. And the more you trust it, the more life confirms it. Doors open, paths align, miracles appear, not as exceptions, but as the natural result of resonance. Because when you live from the higher mind, you are no longer a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop, moving with the tide of divine intelligence. And your life becomes what it was always meant to be, a living bridge between the heavens and the earth, between the seen and the unseen, between who you were and who you truly are. Chapter 9. The New You, a Superconscious Being. You are not becoming something new. You are revealing what has always been there. The old you, built from reactions, stories and fears, was never the truth. It was a costume worn so long you forgot you were wearing it. But now the seams are splitting, the fabric is falling away, and beneath it something luminous is emerging. Not louder, not more powerful in the way the world defines it, just real, still, clear, certain. A being whose identity is no longer shaped by survival, but by remembrance. This is what it means to be superconscious. You are not just a thinker. You are awareness itself. You are not just a personality. You are a field of presence, limitless, eternal, and awake. The old self lived in reaction. The new self lives in resonance. The old self tried to control the world to feel safe. The new self knows it is safe because it rests in the truth of oneness. The old self chased purpose like a finish line. The new self becomes purposeful with every breath. There is no striving in the superconscious state, only unfolding, only listening, only responding to the quiet impulse of life moving through you. You begin to see how everything in your past, every heartbreak, every loss, every delay, was not punishment. It was preparation. It was life, breaking the shell that kept you small. It was grace in disguise, teaching you to let go of what you were never meant to carry. And now there's nothing left to carry. Only light, only peace, only truth. You don't need the story anymore, the identity, the role. You don't need to convince anyone of who you are because your energy speaks louder than your words ever could. You enter rooms differently. You ask for nothing. You radiate everything. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. The new you is not above others. It is simply rooted in the real, humbled by the immensity of life, softened by the awareness of oneness, empowered by the knowing that nothing can be taken from what is infinite. You stop asking, "Am I doing enough?" And you begin asking, "Am I being true to the deeper rhythm inside me?" You no longer compare. You calibrate. You tune into your own field and let that guide every decision, every action, every breath. You realize that the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more awake ones. More people are willing to live from their center, to trust the invisible, to create from alignment, to speak when silence becomes dishonesty, and to be silent when noise would only feed the illusion. You are not here to escape this world. You are here to reveal a new one through how you live. You are not here to ascend into the sky and leave the earth behind. You are here to anchor heaven in your body, to bring light into matter, to embody the divine in the ordinary. This is the return of the true human, not the broken one struggling to heal, but the whole one remembers its place in the cosmic order. And that order is beautiful, it is precise, it is already written. And now, you are reading from the right page. The new you doesn't rush, because it trusts timing. The new you doesn't chase, because it recognizes magnetism. The new you doesn't cling, because it knows that what is truly yours cannot be lost. You wake with clarity, you walk with ease, you speak with kindness, not because you're trying to be good, but because love has become your natural vibration. You see others not through the lens of judgment, but through the eyes of God. And when they forget who they are, you do not react. You remember for them. This is not a spiritual performance. This is embodiment. You become a living transmission of the superconscious field. You anchor it wherever you go, in your work, in your presence, in your silence, in your joy. You don't need to shout it. You are it. A quiet lighthouse in a noisy world, unshaken, unapologetic, unmoved by false urgency, moved only by truth. The new you is not afraid to be seen, but no longer needs to be seen, not afraid to be alone, but no longer seeks isolation, not afraid to be wrong because it has made peace with unknowing. You are free, not because nothing touches you, but because everything passes through you without residue. You are whole, not because you have no more shadows, but because you no longer fear their presence. You are awake, not because you've figured it all out, but because you've remembered what can never be forgotten. The divine lives in you, moves through you, speaks as you. And now you speak back, not with words, but with how you live. Closing transmission. You have always been home. Be still. Let the breath return to silence. Let the thoughts slow. Let the walls around your identity soften just for this moment. You have traveled far in this remembrance, not across miles, but through layers of illusion, through the fog of forgetting, through the stories that said you were not enough, not worthy, not divine. And now here you are, not as someone new, but as someone true. You did not ascend into the heavens. You descended into your center, into the place that was never lost, just buried beneath the noise, The superconscious is not a destination. It is not a reward for the worthy. It is your origin. It is your original name before the world gave you another. And now, as the dust of illusion clears, you see what was always there. The doorway, the light, the still, small voice that waited, not in judgment, but in love. The part of you that said, "I am here. Whenever you are ready. I have always been here." And you are ready, not because you are perfect, but because you are present. Not because you've mastered the path, but because you've remembered there is no path. There is only now, only this breath, only this love. So take a moment, let everything fall away. Every mask, every fear, every false responsibility. Let it all return to dust and feel what remains. Stillness, awareness, the pulse of something greater, beating through your own heart. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. You are not a soul trapped in a body. You are the infinite experiencing itself through the miracle of your life. So do not fear forgetting again. You will. That's what it means to be human. But now you know the way back. You've carved a path into your own center, and even if the world distracts you, even if the mind pulls you under, even if the old stories whisper again, you will return. Faster each time, softer each time, wiser each time. Because now, something inside you stays awake, even when you sleep, even when you fall, even when you doubt. And that something is you, the you that was never wounded, the you that was never afraid, the you that remembers eternity. So, walk back into the world, not as someone who needs to be fixed, but as someone who has remembered their role in the great unfolding. You are a bridge now, between silence and sound, between the invisible and the visible, between source and form. You don't need permission. You don't need a plan. You only need presence. Let your life be the ritual. Let your breath be the prayer. Let your existence be the offering. Because this world is not waiting for more noise. It is waiting for you. The real you. The awakened you. The one who never left, only closed their eyes for a while. Now, you are opening them, and the light has never been brighter. Welcome home. You have always been home.